Hi, Laura. It's so good to have you here on the show today.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
I am so well. What a real privilege it is to have you here. And I can't believe we've not sat down and recorded before. I have had the real pleasure of kind of sitting front row watching you build your property business. And you're
You
such
have.
a great example. And I'm so excited to talk about this on the show today because I knew that there was something in motion with you in the background. I didn't know we were quite where we are with it. And I just think just so serendipitous that we can sit down and talk about that today, because it kind of feels like almost like the journey has been completed. The circle has been closed in a way. But look, I don't want to give too much away just yet. So Laura, you and I, we know each other and have done for a long time. You're a mastermind. But for anyone listening to the show today, can you just very quickly give us a quick intro about who you are, not necessarily where you are just yet, but where the business is and what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so thanks so much for having me on. I'm really, really excited to be here. I am Laura from Haus Property. I have to spell it. Why I named my business a word spelt in a way that nobody expects, I have no idea, because I have to say Haus Property, Haus, all the time. But I have a portfolio of mostly HMO stock in the Manchester area, some of which is supported living, some of which is professional stock. I come from a hairdressing background, so absolutely nothing to do with property or this side of things at all originally. But I've spent the last 4 or 5 years educating myself and learning alongside you, actually, obviously, Andy, for a portion of it. And yeah, that's me.
Lovely. Well, let's go back to when you were a hairdresser, Laura. Let's start there. I'd love to know a little bit more about what life looked like then, because we're going to find out how life looks like now. But can you take us back? How did property come onto the radar, and what did life look like 5 years ago before you started this venture?
Okay, so I was hairdressing in Manchester city centre for years and loved that, and then had a slight shift in the hair industry over to the sales side of things. I was still doing hair as well, but my main job was selling hair products to hairdressers instead. So there was a bit of a shift there. And I suppose a different skill set as well in that move. And then in 2019, me and my husband, Dan, went travelling. We took 4 months off. Both of us got a sabbatical. We went away. And whilst I was travelling, I was just like, this has to be, more than a one-time thing, basically. I knew we'd always travel, been on big holidays, that kind of thing. But for me, I was just like, yeah, this is what it is all about for me. So came back, and just before we locked down in 2020, went back to work, and I very much got the vibe off my previous employer that, like, I hope you had fun, because that's it. That's you're locked in now. This is it. So when we did lock down, when COVID hit, I was furloughed, and it really gave me the chance to have a think about what else I could do. There was always something, property was always something that me and Dan had discussed as well. So it was on the periphery of my thoughts anyway. And then when I had the time to actually stop, think about it, do lots of research, etc., that's when things really started to kick off for me.
I think it's interesting this, because I've sat here and spoken to so many people, and that point at which something changed, and for so many people there seems to have been something, and for you guys it was obviously that opportunity to go away and do some traveling again, and then I suppose that stark realization that, oh my god, like we're gonna have to go home and just go back to our normal lives, and then when we will be able to do this again. And I can completely resonate with that. And Dan wasn't in property either, and I just want to point this out to everybody listening today. You guys have achieved so much. We're going to find out about that, but you guys really didn't have a platform to spring from in terms of property, did you? Dan was busy and working for a really cool company as well.
Yeah, his background was all tech and mine was hair and then sales. So neither of us had anything linking us to property. I do always think, though, that there are some transferable skills, because you need such a broad spectrum of skills within property, for sure, that I think, the sales side of things, or the people skills and everything that you have along the way from previous roles, can definitely help. But in terms of, say, like construction or anything like that, no, we were completely lost.
I mean, what do you remember about this stage and the point at which you guys made this decision? Did you start with a plan, or was the plan at that point just to maybe figure out what a plan could be? I mean, how much did you actually know, and how much did you need to go and figure out just to get started? Because I know a lot of people who are listening today and probably are in a similar position now themselves and wondering what they need to actually make that leap. And I just want to kind of get into how much confidence you guys had before you actually said, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to step away from this and we're going to start doing this.
Okay, yeah, good question. So I think what was maybe slightly unusual for us is that we'd kind of thought about doing it off and on for a while, but never actually, invested any time into figuring out how we would do it. So we'd been conscious to try and create a pot of money that we would potentially, in our heads, one day use on an investment. But when I was furloughed, Dan was not. And because of his previous role, if anything, he was busier than he's ever been, basically. So he was full on working and I was furloughed and I was doing all the research. And when Haus was first set up, I did go back to work then once everything reopened, hair salons reopened, etc. I did go back to work. But I was by this point completely convinced that I knew that I had to do something else. It really wasn't from a financial point of view. It was from a flexibility point of view. I just wanted more flexibility. And I would read everything I could, listen to any podcast that I could. I would make notes on the podcast on things that I didn't understand and I would go away and research them. I was 100% convinced by this point this is the way that it was going to be, that I would be able to create that freedom. But in the early stages of Haus, it was only me involved. So Dan's work was really, really demanding. Mine was busy, but not in the same way. He worked across multiple time zones, for example, and I didn't. So I set Haus up. I bought the first buy-to-let and developed that, and then went on to buy a 3-bed house and developed that into a HMO as well. And at that point, it was all just me. So, every single element, all the moving parts of the business was all just on me. And then it was after that Dan joined the business. So I really did need support. So then I went and found the support that I needed, predominantly from Jade, who we both know, we're both friends with, and but through any way that I could be educating myself on the property side of things, that was me. I was there, even in the evenings and stuff. One of my friends says to me, "That sounds great for you." Like, she couldn't imagine anything more boring.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I think what really strikes me there is that how you were obviously so committed to getting to a point where you could start buying property, and I suppose learning and finding some advice and experience to be guided by was a key part of that decision. But it doesn't sound like you were certainly at this point half in, half out. It was very much, we're going to do this, we're going to figure out exactly how to do it, and we're going to just sort of make it happen. And also, remind me, Laura, but were you a mum by this point in 2019? I know he was a bit younger, but it wasn't like you just had all the time in the world to kind of just build your business as well.
No, definitely not. And I went back to work. So for some context, when I was working, I covered everything from Birmingham upwards, the whole of England and the whole of Scotland for work. So I would drive, and everything would, well, not everything. Sometimes I would take trains or flights. But predominantly that was all done driving around as well. So it was busy, long weeks, demanding weeks. I was also expecting my first baby, my little boy, and whilst I was on the refurb of the single let, and then we also decided to have a kitchen extension built at home as well, because we didn't have enough to do. So then there was all the project management of that. So honestly, I could have walked away because of time issues many, many, many times, but no, I was 100% convinced that that was the right thing to do and that it would be worth it. I knew it would be worth it. I didn't doubt that for a second. So that's why I could just keep going and, keep figuring things out day by day, week by week.
I think it's always useful to highlight these sorts of stories because I know so many people are afraid of doing this and actually starting to try and build the business that they want because they are busy. We're all very busy and it is difficult. I think it'd be unfair of us to sit here, wouldn't it, and say that it isn't difficult. And it's a huge compromise and a huge sacrifice, giving up weekends, giving up your evenings. And people, your friends and their family will probably think you're crazy. But strangely, if you are committed and you can get through that and then start to engineer that time back, it can, and sometimes, often quite slow, but it can turn the dial, can't it? So it's nice to hear you talk quite honestly about that, Laura, because obviously you had a huge amount going on in your life. And the backdrop to this is it was COVID, and in the early years at least, and that was not a particularly positive time for anybody. Lots of uncertainty, and off the back of that, loads of stuff like Liz Truss and all the interest rates, and it was a pretty crazy time, wasn't it? Not an easy period to build a business.
100%. And even, do you remember when all the prices of everything, stuff for developments, just skyrocketed, or you couldn't get hold of certain things? I was like, why am I in a position where I'm doing one project at home of one for the business, and no one can get hold of materials, or if they can, like, people would charge it. I was like, why now? But no, I think has to be a huge level of commitment. But I also think I saw something a while ago saying that people that set up their own businesses that, you know, do this kind of thing are often like a bit delusional, and feel like that really resonates. I was like, I can do that. I can do all of those things. That's completely fine. You know, there was no doubt in my mind. And then occasionally I'd catch myself and it'd be like, wow, this is all too much. You know, maybe I can't do it all, but I've got to now. Like, I've been at the deep end. So I think it is right to highlight it. It is so hard. But I think if you're a bit delusional, maybe like me, then it definitely goes a long way. It helps.
I think like me as well. Like, you've just said something that no one has ever really said to me on the show before. But I totally get it. And I completely agree. I remember, and Gemma has brought this up more than once, but when I first met Gemma, I told Gemma, probably off the cuff, that my plan was to be able to retire at 35. And I didn't realize that actually for a long time, Gemma thought I was a bit of a weirdo and maybe completely delusional. And then eventually, you know, she got to know me and realized that, okay, maybe he could do that, or maybe he is onto something. But on reflection, that sort of stuff and the way that we often do think in, you know, as investors and with the sorts of ambitions that we do, it is a bit crazy. And I do understand why other people that are not interested in this do think we're a bit crazy and sometimes almost like want to distance themselves from us a little bit, because it doesn't always make sense what we want to do and what we're prepared to go through to make it happen. Does that sound?
I think it doesn't make sense more than it does make sense sometimes. So yeah, I think you have to find your people, right? And you have to, you know, get a little group or some support of some sort that is full of other like-minded people that are maybe, you know, similar characters to carry you through that, because other people won't understand it. And that's completely fine with me. Like I say, some of my friends like, I mean, that sounds fab for you, but it just would not be for me. But then, you know, everyone's different, aren't they?
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about that group of people, those sort of support group around you in today's episode with you. But before we get there, let's cross the bridge from delusion to actually, you know, changing your life. Because I remember when we first met and you and Dan were really clear on what you guys wanted to do. Obviously, you've shared that with us today. You obviously wanted to go away traveling, and actually what you wanted to do was spend some time, quite a lot of time, potentially living in a different country, in a different part of the world. So tell us where we are at now, Laura, in terms of portfolio, and then what that has enabled you to do more recently.
Okay, cool. So when I first met you, then I was at the early stages of developing HMOs, always with the vision to be able to have flexibility and freedom to live somewhere else, whether that was, you know, for a few years or long term. I didn't really know. I just knew that I wanted to go and have that experience and, you know, try it out. So since then, we've developed out multiple HMOs. We've got some, like I say, that are supported living, which I know has been a real buzzword the last couple of years, but something that works really well for me and my portfolio. And also some professional HMOs too. I've actually today had the valuation on a single let as well. So kind of come back to the single lets too. But this portfolio now has allowed me to basically have the flexibility and the freedom. And actually, it's worth mentioning, whenever I was setting anything up or adding new parts to the business, I was always mindful. I always knew that I wanted to be able to step away from them. Not in terms of work. I don't want to not work. I enjoy working. But I wanted to be able to be not in the same location as them necessarily. So that was always a mindful thing to be, you know, that was considered throughout the whole process. But a week ago today, me and Dan, and we now have 2 babies, all flew to Mallorca. And then now this is our home for the next 3 years. I've got a 3-year visa and we're all set up in the sunshine.
Wow. I mean, that is just so wonderful to hear, because we would talk about this every single month, and the plan and the objective, and it was very well considered, you know, the portfolio and the types of tenants and the systems, the process and the people, and what it was able to generate. Everything had to work to make this happen. And to now be sat here opposite you while you are in Spain is so great to see. And actually, I think, I'm so pleased for you guys. And also, I just think it's such an inspirational story to share, because
thank you.
5-6 years ago, it was all just a hope, a bit of a dream, really, wasn't it? And actually, I think when you put it all into context, it'll be a blink of the eye that the time that it's actually taking you to get from there to where you are now.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting though. I was speaking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, just as I was approaching leaving Manchester, and he was saying, "Does it feel surreal?" And I said, "It does." It's funny, you know. It's like what's happened in the last 5 years has been like a series of steps, and the first one is thinking, "I would love to have more freedom," and then maybe being able to kind of see a way that that could be possible. And then it was stepping into, okay, I can see other people that are in this position that are doing it, or even that could do it. And I'm fully aware, by the way, that not everybody wants to go and live in Spain or travel or go to other countries. Like for me, that's my goal. But other people that have built their businesses that would give them the option to be location free if they wanted to, even if they didn't personally want to, I could see that they'd achieve that. So then I was like, okay, so it is doable, and these people are doing it. This is realistic. I can see that now. And then I was taking the steps to actually make it all happen. And then I got to the point where it was, okay, here's the line in the sand, we can go, we can do that. But then you have to actually go, you know, like you get to the point and it's like, oh, right, I have to pack my whole family up, most of my belongings, leave everything behind that I know, my whole family and friendship group and everything are all there, and I'm going to go somewhere new. So it was always well considered, it was always well thought through, but it doesn't make it not scary, you know, like when it actually comes to the moment where you're taking that leap and going. Super exciting, but also obviously very nerve-wracking and everything all at the same time. It's a mix of emotions.
I'm sure, but you're going to have the best time and you've earned it. And I think also, just to add a bit more context here, you haven't said yet, but actually Dan's now full-time in the business as well. So Dan's been able to step away from his professional career, join you in the business. And actually, before we hit record, I sort of said, what's the plan for the next couple of years then when you're in Spain? And actually, I think the answer was really quite refreshing to hear. So just tell us about that, Laura. Tell us like what you're going to do in Spain for the next couple of years and what the plan is with the business, because I think it would be easy to think that, you know, it's kind of keep your foot on the floor and, you know, more. But actually, what you said was a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. I think I just want to we want to kind of sit in this moment and be really present and enjoy it for what it is. You don't work so hard to get to something, to want to be, you know, rushed off your feet constantly or, you know, chasing your tail. We just want to be here. We want the kids to have a great time. We want to slow down a little bit. We both still want to work and we will do. But we've just renovated one buy-to-let that was really nice, extremely easy project compared to the HMO stuff. It's nice to do one after back-to-back HMOs for years. And I think for us now that will be the plan for going forward. So we've got 3 years here and we maybe do a couple of buy-to-lets a year, 2-3 buy-to-lets a year potentially at the most. Really slow down. I'm conscious that we are doing things from a distance now, and as much as we've got a great team at home and, you know, we could figure it out if we wanted to do more difficult strategies like HMO, etc., we would be able to. It feels quite nice to be able to take our foot off the gas and just enjoy things at a slower pace and just things tick along a little bit more nicely. I know that doesn't sound like very sexy, does it? People want to be like, I want this many HMOs and this many thousands of pounds extra income a month and stuff, but like realistically, that's where we are. We've got to the goal, or the first one, anyway. We're quite happy, and this is slow and steady now for us.
I think what you guys set out to do and what you've just achieved is a very tangible goal that you set yourselves. Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, part of that is achieving some sort of number that comes into the bank account every single month. Yeah. But actually, it was very much a lifestyle thing for you guys. It always was. You both had good jobs. It wasn't necessarily that you wanted to, be more material or do other things. It was just that you wanted to live in a slightly different way. And a big part of that for you was just having the freedom and the choice to say, actually, I don't want to spend my day, driving up and down the M62 or whatever it is today. I want to I just want to pick the kids up or drop them off at nursery or pick them up, and maybe, go for a cup, do whatever you want in the day, which is really, I think, really, really refreshing to hear. And actually, I think most people listening today will completely get it and actually think, I would love a bit of that. Let's talk about Mastermind then, Laura. You talked about having your people around you. You were a really key member of the Mastermind group. They're such close environments, very intimate. You share lots of very personal stuff, lots of very sensitive material. And, you seem to thrive in that environment. But I'm interested to know from your perspective, first of all, why you made that decision to join something like that. And then what sort of an impact you think it had and how it shaped the trajectory of your business, how it influenced what you actually did with your business.
Okay. So I come off the back of working one-to-one with someone that was helping support me, obviously, for maybe a year or so. And that had been fantastic for me and was definitely completely suitable to me at the very beginning. But as I felt like I was gaining confidence, I felt like I just needed to be surrounded by other people, doing the same things as me. And whilst I'm a big advocate of networking, I always go to events and I'm always banging on about it to people. I think it just I was looking for something that put me in a room with, I suppose, people that were taking action consistently, but that were also doing bigger and better things than me. And that felt quite important to me, to be surrounded by people in those positions, because I just felt like that was going to be the best learning environment. And I most definitely did meet some of my people in that room. I still see them regularly, message, voice note. We have a group chat and that kind of thing with people that I met in that room with you in Sheffield that have been invaluable to me and Dan and the business ever since then. And I think if someone's not done it, you can't really explain it to them, I suppose. That's the only way I would say it. But it's so powerful to have a group of people working towards similar things, to yourself, and showing up with them every single month. For me, it was a brilliant experience. I absolutely loved it. And it's not like it stopped the day that finished, I suppose. That's what's been lovely.
Those relationships have continued, and that support
Absolutely.
vehicle. And I think as you develop so do other people, I always, with the Mastermind, see it as an environment where the amount of value you can take from it is almost exponential, because you've always got this spider web of networks, some really sort of close associates, all doing lots of really great stuff, very active, and they've all got their sort of important contacts that you can tap into via them. And it gives you this sort of order of magnitude, more opportunities in all sorts of ways. And then sometimes just sitting across the table from people who are experiencing similar problems, but perhaps in a different location, people who have got different goals, people who've got different perspectives. I think it pushes you, and I think it challenges you, and I think it makes you see things in a different way sometimes, which can be a very useful exercise.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's nice, because everyone's, like, I always use the phrase about people being a cheerleader, like, I think everyone was always cheering each other on in a really positive way, and that's continued too. So I see somebody else do something great, or finish a project that I know has been difficult, or get round a planning issue, or whatever it may be, and I'm so happy for them, and I'm always the first person to say that I am, but that's reciprocated too. And I think it is just support, as well as knowledge, information, education, training. There's just that feeling of that you've got someone that's on your side as well. You've got cheerleaders.
Definitely. And I think because there's a huge amount of mutual respect in a room like that, people also aren't afraid to share their opinion. If if they think it's in your best interest, perhaps actually don't do that deal, or perhaps maybe don't structure it like that way, or perhaps you've got that one wrong. And I think that that's so important to have, because with friends and family, as much as we love them, if they're not property people, they do just want to please us. They want to say the nice thing. And sometimes that's actually not what we want to hear, right? But it's not necessarily what we need to hear.
The best thing for you. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I've, asked questions before and been told multiple times, like, why would you go about it that way? Why would you try this? Why wouldn't you just do this? It's so much simpler. I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I think, even just small things like that saves you time and effort, if nothing else.
I think that's also a really good point. Sometimes the solution is so much quicker to get to if you've just got some key people like that around you, and you can all kind of brainstorm a problem, put it on the table, dig into it, pull it apart. And I think in a game like this, where 95% of things move at a snail's pace, the other 5% of things that we do have more control on, if we can act quickly, we can get such better results for them, or we can potentially kind of stem a bleeding neck problem very quick, which in property, for example, like a really bad tenant, and the sorts of tenants that just, I remember you had one as well, like just causing such a nuisance, and you just don't know quite the best way to go about dealing with them. And someone says, look, I've dealt with this before, or I run a big agency, here's exactly what we would do. And all of a sudden it's like, you know what, that probably saved me months and thousands of pounds. Thanks very much.
Yeah, because as well, I came from a team. I think there was about 16, 17 people on the team that I worked with in previously. So when you go from that to either working on your own or with your other half, that's a real shift in itself. So to feel like you've got some sort of a team as well, for me, is very reassuring. I do really like it.
You very kindly shared a case study with us recently, which will be live in the HMO roadmap soon. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's an 8-bed. I'd love to just pick at this a little bit, Laura, just to find out a little bit more about the deal, how you put it all together. So can you tell us about this? This is one of your more recent projects. I think, I'd say a real standout project as well. It really is pretty incredible. Can you tell us about how you found this deal, Laura? Was it open market? Was it something that someone introduce you to on the market? Like, how did you get your hands on it in the first place?
So this was bought in auction, and it was advertised on Rightmove. It wasn't, a secret or anything. It wasn't off market, but it was in an auction where there was an awful lot of properties uploaded into the same online auction all on the same day, because one portfolio landlord was offloading his whole portfolio in one go. This is what it transpired to be once we did a bit of digging. So the property was purchased in that way. We did have some issues prior to the actual auction date because we were struggling to gain access. This was the tenant. This was the
I
one
do remember this. Yes, I am. That's it.
That we had trouble with from before we even purchased it. So that was how it was sourced. It was an auction property. There was nothing, magical to the actual sourcing side of it, but it was a 5-bedroom property, which us in our area we knew was quite unusual. The square meterage of it in itself, the location, etc., was perfect and a really, really exciting prospect for us.
So you, if I remember rightly, paid about 195,000, so just under 200 grand.
Yeah.
Plus your costs. And then you did a whopping refurb on it, like a really big refurb. Like the refurb was more than you bought the property for, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a few structural issues to deal with, first of all. Then the cellar was there, but then all needed tanking, converting, etc. The 2 floors needed reconfiguring. The ground floor and the first floor needed reconfiguring. We dormered the loft and created like a huge amount of space up there, huge dormer, 2 large bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, etc. So yeah, the refurb costs, renovation costs were much higher than anything I'd done before. And there were moments during that build and I was like, oh gosh, I still have to remind myself that it's all going to be fine. We know what we're doing here, give myself a little pep talk. But yeah, it was definitely a big level up, that project.
Well, I'm sure you don't need a reminder of the numbers, but I'm going to remind you anyway, because I've got them in front of me now. So you were all in for somewhere over 400,000, low 400s. And when it came to revaluing this, you got it revalued at 545,000, which is just superb. That is really, really incredible. And I think actually, this is one thing that I say to my clients a lot. Property is a really tough gig because it's very, very capital intensive. You do have to speculate an awful lot if you want to make some money. So in your case, you speculated over 400,000 and then you made a big chunk off the back of that. Obviously, you took advantage of the commercial valuation there, but a huge sort of upside, a huge equity gain on a project like that and a real cash cow. Now, Laura, was this a project that you designed for your sort of social housing strategy?
So this one, previously, I'd known exactly this property I'm sourcing. I'm looking at this would be perfect for professionals, or this would be perfect for supported living. And it was a real conscious decision. With this project, House Stamford, as I refer to it, it was a funny one because we could have gone either way with it. We had both options available to us. And so it was a decision based on if the right supported living provider came along and we got the right people, essentially, then we were happy to do it. If not, we would have kept it ourselves. But it has been given to a care provider, so this isn't one that we have professionals in, but it suits the end user perfectly. And I know this is something that we've talked about in the Mastermind as well, about the property has to suit the end user. It has to suit the tenant. You can't just build it and then hope to find the right person. So because we were in the build stage, we could involve them in that process, the care provider, make sure that it suited all their purposes. And it was just felt like the right choice for us.
I think that's a really useful piece of advice to share, Laura, because we would love to think, wouldn't we, that everything, all those ducks have to be in a row before we start. And actually, in this example, some of those conversations started to happen during the build phase, and then you were able to adapt and manage. And I guess there was always the possibility or risk that provider wouldn't have been there, or maybe they would have wanted something slightly different. But I think having the faith that, you're just in the market, you're active, it will start conversations by virtue of just being in it, things will happen. I think it's really important as an investor. And, we would love, I think often we're quite mechanical, and we would love to think that the outcome should be quite predictable every time. And sometimes I think we've just got to be able to accept that hopefully some other things will just happen through the course of the project or through the course of building the business this year. And this is a really great example. And obviously it's worked incredibly well for you guys, especially alongside your plans to leave the country.
Yeah, definitely. It has done. I think we always need a plan B and a plan C, right? So there was always going to be other things that we could have done. And actually, it would have suited the professional market equally as well. But with the view of not being in the country, wanting to have the flexibility and freedom, although they aren't hands off, as people like to say them, supported living stuff is completely hands off. It's not completely, but it's definitely more than 8 tenants in a professional HMO would have been, when I compare the two. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think just having that open-mindedness, and I think if you can find deals and structured deals where you have got these multiple options, they are by far the best deals. That's the sort of stuff I like to buy myself. I like to buy things that have got a garden, even though they're a pain to maintain. I like to buy things that have got parking. I prefer to buy things that are semi-detached if I can, just because they're a bit more desirable on the market. And I like, things that if it wasn't a HMO, a family could just move in and I could sell it, or whatever. So
exact same conversations that, I've been having over the past couple of years as well. I think it's so important not to just, pigeonhole one property. I want the gardens, the view for it to be a family house, etc. Just in case it just feels a little bit more secure to me, a bit safer.
I mean, I don't want to give too much more about your case study away. It's inside the HMO roadmap, so all of our listeners can go and check it out. Head to the hmoroadmap.co.uk. But I mean, if you want to see what a £220,000 refurb looks like, go and look. If you want to see how to optimize floor plans on a HMO of this sort of size, go and look at it. And if you want to see something that honestly just looks incredible, I don't want anybody to think for a second, because it's social housing, that this looks anything but top quality. You've got to go and check it out. It's a really, really incredible project.
Thanks.
Laura, before we wrap up, I want to take you back again, and just close this circle. Now, obviously, we went back and you talked about, before you got into property, you talked about the journey to where we are now. Looking back and considering everything that you've had to deal with, the ups and downs and the challenges, what would you say has been the bit that has tested you the most, that has perhaps surprised you the most about all of this?
I think what's really surprised me was it felt very slow at the beginning. Till there was one buy-to-let, waited till that was finished, I refinanced it. Then, I saw something that could be a HMO, then developed that. That felt like it took ages because I had no idea how long these things actually take. And people had said to me, you'll find that the momentum picks up and that all of a sudden things are going much more quickly than you'd anticipated. And for me, that was definitely a surprising element of this journey. At the beginning, okay, property day to day feels slow, there's no doubt about that. But we're coming from that first property to where we are now, it did just seem to, it went so quickly after a while, to the point where I remember we had 2 completions on the same day at one point, for properties and things like that. I would never have felt at the very beginning would be possible for me to handle. Yet there I was handling it, So I think the education piece definitely helped me, but I think just throwing myself in it, being a bit delulu, and just getting on with it meant that the speed was there, and that's what's taken me by surprise.
Well, I'm so glad that you took it all in its stride and you just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I've watched you do better and better projects, raise more and more money, and build a really, really fantastic business that has ultimately let you move to Spain. So well done to you guys. I know how hard you worked, and you did all of this with 2 babies in tow in the end. I remember, how you're very pregnant at Mastermind. And
very pregnant.
So, you really kind of done exactly what you set out to do. And the really cool thing about this now is that that platform is for you to do with whatever you like. It is a springboard to do absolutely anything, whether that's just continue enjoying this new pace of life, whether it's to, at some point pick that up and do more projects or do different types of projects, whatever it is. But I'm certainly really excited to see what that does look like for you guys. And Laura, for anyone who is listening today, and I'm sure it is many people that is inspired, encouraged, and wants to follow your journey, maybe even wants to reach out and look at whether or not there might be a way to work with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Typically, Instagram is where I spend most time. So my profile on there is Haus, spelled Haus, _ property _ And I also have a website, houseproperty.co.uk, if people wanted to go and maybe have a look in a bit more detail at the portfolio and that kind of thing. Questions, anybody wanting to send any messages or anything, Instagram's definitely the best place for that.
Great. And last question, I promise, but when is the moving in party?
Yeah, well, I would absolutely love to see you over here. If you think you're the first person that's asked me that, Andy, you are very wrong, because you would be in good company with, Brian and Lauren and Hamza and loads of other people that we've spoken
lots of our
to.
masterminders.
Absolutely. Everyone's keen to get over. So yeah, it would be lovely to see you over here in the sunshine at some point.
Well, I think a mastermind reunion over there sounds just perfect to me.
Perfect.
Laura, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so pleased for you and Dan, and really, really, really excited to watch you enjoy your kind of new life out there in the sun.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much.